right, welcome back to Blue by 90. I'm Justin, joined by Tanner today, and we are officially in the off season of Michigan football. We haven't talked to you guys in a while since the holidays, before the holidays. So I hope everyone's holiday went well. Tanner, I hope yours went well. I'm tired, a little bit sick. Had a lot of drinks, a lot of cookies, a lot of food, but ultimately at the end of the day, I came out with a W over Alabama, which I was not expecting at all, if I'm being totally honest with you.
No, man, it was a good holiday. First holiday with Emery, and she was more interested in eating the wrapping paper than opening the presents. But we got
Okay.
there. Little assistance from Dad. But no, man, it was good, and it was great to watch another Michigan game. We watched it at the Pretzel Bell in Ann Arbor in the basement. Had a great time on the 31st, and yeah, I was not expecting Michigan to go in there and win that game with the amount of guys that were opting out or preparing for the NFL draft. Especially when you consider Alabama had their starting quarterback. They had a lot. I mean, I remember, I don't know the exact name of the player, but there was a guy that got a little dinged up, and it was like Mel Kiper's 20th best player in the draft, right? Like a lot of their guys were playing. I mean, Keon Sabb, former Wolverine, he was out. I think he'd been hurt, but a lot of their best players were in that game, and so for Michigan to go in there and got a little bit of aid from the rain, right? It was a lot of fun with the slip and
That was
sliding going on.
absolute chaos at the
It
beginning of
was
that
the
game.
best.
I
Yeah.
mean, we didn't like it was like holy shit. This is an actual
It was every
torrential
play.
downpour. And then the first 10 minutes of the game, every single time Milrow took a snap, it was a turnover. And we're sitting there, Pretzel, like looking at each other, like, what is going on? What's happening right now?
Yeah, it was miraculous. Honestly, the rain, this torrential downpour, and I'll say this. Alabama, it looked like they could hold on to the football, but Michigan guys were doing a great job of it. I mean, they threw a back shoulder fade to Freddie Moore in the rain, right? And Wesley Walker had the tip drill interception. Like these guys, they just they defy the odds a lot, especially in 2024 when things were looking pretty bleak, sitting at 5-5 going into Northwestern, and then they play their three best games of the year by far, and we're dominant defensively, offensively. We know what it is, but I just think it's such a credit to Sharon Moore and should give Michigan fans a lot of excitement that one, he was able to kind of maneuver through this season, all the difficulties that we've talked about over the last, about a year since Jim Harbaugh went to the NFL, the things that were kind of stacked against him as far as hiring a staff in February, but trying to find anybody in the portal in that spring window. And the fact that he went and got Amir Hall, who should go down as a Michigan legend, right? Wesley Walker, towards the end of the year, played some fantastic football when he got in there. It was just such a testament to what he was able to do with some of the limitations offensively. But secondly, I think even more exciting is, especially in college, I think this matters a lot. Your ability to get your players to buy in when things are difficult shows that he is a great leader and is the right leader for this program. So, yeah, you can see here 8-5, but how many times you go 8-5? Not only do you beat Ohio State and Alabama to close the year, but you also beat USC, who's a blue blood as well. I know USC was down, but like an 8-5 year where you beat USC, Ohio State, and Bama, that's pretty impressive. So you got to feel good going into 25.
You throw in Michigan State there too, so you're 2-0 against your rivals, right? So
Minnesota and Northwestern are trophy games now.
Those are trophy games too. So all the trophies still sit in Ann Arbor, which is pretty incredible, despite being 8-5. And I think, to your point, Tanner, the number of guys, I know a lot of people have a lot to say about Will Johnson, quote unquote, opting out, right? And Colston had to sit out that last game. And so there are a couple guys that, I don't know exactly what happened with them, but I think for the most part, these guys, even the top 5, top 10, top 15 draft picks are playing their asses off against Ohio State, right? They're playing down the stretch where, those guys, they've got a ring, right? They've, 21 through 24 or 21 through 23 was like the run, if you want to call it that. They could have cashed it in as soon as they lost to Texas and realized, hey, maybe we don't have the same team that we had last year. And all those guys that are going in the first round or second round could have said, you know what, I'm going to get my NIL money. I'm going to get my draft stock and I'm kind of chilling. But no, everybody bought in, and to all the way down the stretch, even when, to your point, it was bleak at times. There were times when we got on this podcast talking, man, we do not know if Sharon Moore is the right guy or if this team is good at all, right? But ultimately at the end of the year, you kind of have this is hindsight's 2020, but you look back and you're like, man, 8-5 with winnable games at Washington, winnable game against Illinois, Oregon, you're only down a score at a point, right? Like I think that they were not that far away from being 10-2 this year.
Yeah, I mean, they're Indiana as well. I mean, you have a chance,
right?
You have an opportunity to go and win that game, and some mistakes cost you. And a lot of folks, and I agree that Michigan is not a job that is one where you can really learn on the job. But I do think this year was probably really good, not just from a team perspective of a lot of guys that we've seen develop over the season, throughout the course of the season, but also I think Sharon and his coaching staff. I think you look at the way the defense played down the stretch. I thought they were just phenomenal. I thought outside of the timeout that allowed Alabama to go down and get a field goal,
that was tough.
That was not ideal. But outside of that, I thought Sharon's in-game coaching, took a step forward throughout the last part of the season. And again, the coaching staff, I think, you got to look at the players that are in those groups. I mean, you look at the defensive line, they really started to figure it out with Lou Esposito. I thought the linebackers got a lot better throughout the course of the season. I thought Ernest Hausman was playing some damn good football towards the end of the year. Barham was playing really good. I'm excited to watch him come off the edge. I think be kind of he can kind of be a hybrid player. I don't know if that's going to be in the defense, but he's a guy that you can really kind of put in a lot of different places on the football field to make plays. And the secondary. I mean, we've watched Tennessee and Oregon get completely outclassed, outmanned by Ohio State's passing game. That never happened against Michigan. And I know everyone's like, why didn't you just do that against Michigan? Well, maybe it's because Michigan's defense and the way that they play makes it so that it's difficult, because Ohio State, I think they had the third most pass attempts in a game against Michigan. It's not like they weren't trying to throw the ball. So I think, and you bring it all together with Wink Martindale, I will put my hand up. We were very harsh on the defense and the play calling and some of the ideas and the stunts and the twists that they were running, and having Mason Graham line up as an edge defender. Wink Martindale, throughout the course of the year, I think once he kind of finally figured out that, like, these are college kids, and I think a ton of people have said this. I think he might have even said this, but like, I'm not going up against, Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. Like, they're college kids on both sides. So with your players, you can keep it simple. And you don't need to be overly complex or, sophisticated when you're running your scheme, because college quarterbacks, for the most part, they're not as smart as NFL players. So I think he kind of figured that out, and it got a lot better, obviously, towards the end of the season.
I'm not going to lie to you. I hand up, I have some tweets to delete about Wink Martindale that I put out there.
I probably do too.
Yep. And I think a lot of Michigan fans do too, right? It is, it was, things were not going well during that Oregon game, right? And Oregon is, up until Ohio State, they were the number one team in the country, right? But then to your point, watching that Ohio State game, the Michigan versus Ohio State game, where Michigan just clamps down. Will Howard looked like he had no idea what to do, right? And Chip Kelly he had no idea what to do. Jeremiah Smith then goes out against Oregon. And I mean, that was like, I've never seen dominance like that, right? Like that was like Ohio State playing against an FCS team. And so it is just shocking. I think all of us, both during the Michigan-Ohio State game and then more so during the Ohio State-Oregon game, were like, what happened on November 29th? Like, that is just the craziest thing. But ultimately, it's pretty nuts, because pre-2020, I was sitting there like, we'll never beat Ohio State, no matter how good our defense is. They've got these crossing routes that put our guys in a blender, and we don't know how to defend it. Now it's the complete opposite, where it's like, we've got this secret formula to beat Ohio State, not only just with the defensive schemes, but, we talked about Sharon getting his guys up to play. Holy shit, them coming out in Ohio Stadium, where every Ohio State fan and player and coach was out for blood going into that game. Their plan was to put up 50 plus points, give up nothing to our offense, and make an embarrassment out of Michigan football and have revenge for the past 3 years. Jerome Moore said, I don't care. We're still gonna come out fired up. They did. They had more energy the entire day against Ohio State. They also had more energy against Alabama. And they
They
had
were
nothing
fired
to
up.
play. They were fired up while the rain's coming down. You could tell Jalen Milroe has no desire to be there at all. But so I just it is crazy. But at 8-5, it's about the best 8-5 season that you could possibly have. And going into 2025, you're feeling really good about just the fact that I think the culture is there. I think that's the foundation. You look at, we'll talk about the Lions in a minute here, but you look at what Dan Campbell's done there, and I put out a post about this today with what Jim Harbaugh did. It all starts with that culture. You can put, guys wherever you see, teams all over. You see the San Francisco 49ers. You see a lot of teams in college football that have unbelievable talented rosters, but they don't play up to par. And I think you're looking at what Sharon Moore and this coaching staff is doing, and I'm really excited about the culture that they're continuing, and they're going to build on that, I think, going into 2025.
No, absolutely. I think back to your point about Ohio State and Michigan and Columbus that day. I mean, Ohio State fans are spitting on Michigan players as they're walking into the stadium. Everybody is, pregame, they're jawing, they're talking shit. I feel like Ohio State's always done that in the pregame.
Jack Sawyer thought he was going to have his day. I'll tell you that right now.
I mean, he almost had his day. I mean, it's one of those things that is just still hard to believe, hard to comprehend. I mean, that was the moment in that game, and Michigan found a way to pull it out. But yeah, I think to your point, those guys, they never lost faith. You watched that video. I'm sure everybody's seen it of one of the songs from the movie Sicario, which is pretty badass. But even when you look at the guys in that, just the individual players in that video, like Jaden Denigal, who's now transferred as a San Diego State, but like he's jacked up. He's not going to play.
He has no chance of flipping the field, right?
Right. But, so from the best player on the roster to the worst player on the roster, and everybody in between, like he has a way. Which I think, again, is extremely important in college football. I don't think that stuff works in the NFL. We're going to talk about Dan Campbell, but Dan Campbell is, I think, really good at what he does beyond just being a pump-up guy. I think people mislabel
everybody. Well, I think everybody's learning that right now, right?
Like he's a really good coach, like who's very involved in the X's and O's that go on in that building. It's not just Ben Johnson.
I'll be honest, though. 2 years ago, I didn't know that, right? 2 years ago, I thought that he was just like, all right, I'm going to be the rah-rah guy. I'm going to be, get guys fired up. And now, still having Ben Johnson helps a lot. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. But with Sharon, and I just did that because Sharon was the offensive coordinator of a national championship team. And Jim Harbaugh was obviously very involved. And Kirk Campbell, as much as people kind of are, have that taste in their mouth from this season, was heavily involved with Sharon in 2023 and in 2022 as well. So, I think he's a guy that is, that's honestly, I think sometimes more important as a college head coach because you can kind of delegate to your coordinators to really run the X's and O's, but Sharon's going to be involved in that. Sure. I think, he has a particular style of football that he wants to play. He's not going to really kind of go too far off of the path that Jim Harbaugh had this program on as far as what they look for, what they want to do, kind of seeing that in the portal, right? They get the best running back in the portal. I love Justice Haynes. I would also like to get the best receiver in the portal. I'm sure that guy's already committed. I don't know who it is. But I do think that bodes well for the future, that Sharon is going to continue to be an elite recruiter, which he has been. Even early on in his tenure, he was the guy, he's from Oklahoma. He went and got Dax Hill, right? A 5-star out of the state of Oklahoma. He got him to come to Michigan. And you've seen that on numerous recruitments. So he's going to continue to be an elite recruiter. He's going to have a program that continues to develop players, and he's going to continue to captivate his team to play very well in the biggest moments throughout the season. And that's what is really going to lead to the success of Michigan. I don't know what's going to happen next year. I don't know what's going to happen in 26, 27, but I can tell you I feel very good about where things are. They have their quarterback. Now, who knows what that looks like? We're talking about portal. They go and get Mikey Keene, but as far as just the bigger picture beyond the 2025 portal additions, you have Bryce Underwood. You have a plan in place for NIL to be competitive, to be one of the best programs when it comes to, which Michigan should be, with its alumni base, with I don't have a Michigan degree, but the Michigan degree means something. It holds a lot of value, and a lot of very successful people that come out of this university go on to work and make a lot of money. And you would think that that should be able to come back into the NIL kind of fund, and it is, right? So, and sometimes you have guys that go to Illinois and start Oracle, and their wife goes to Michigan, and they just dump a bunch of money in for Bryce Underwood. So,
Shout out
but I
John Lynn.
just, yeah, from a bigger picture standpoint, and we'll talk portal now, but just kind of put a bow on it. I feel very good about where Michigan is as a program with Sharon Moore, and excited to see what his staff continues to do. We'll see with Chip Lindsey coming in. I think there might be one more staff move. I don't know if there'll be a dedicated special teams coordinator. I think he might still be with the program. I just think they may move him back to an off-field role. So we'll see what other hires he's made. But I mean, man, you talk about a slam dunk as far as some of his hires. Like Lamar Morgan is a dog. Esposito's a dog. Like Wink Martindale's a dog. You know what I mean? So you got to feel really good about where things are at.
Yeah, for sure. I think that ultimately, what I try to tell people all year long, and I know you made the point of like, well, Michigan's not a place where you can learn. You can go to Central Michigan and learn and do whatever you need to. Then, but once you learn, that's when you should come to Michigan. But the reality is that Sharon Moore's our coach right now, and he doesn't have a ton of experience, right? And the reality is too, you were never not going to hire Sharon Moore after what happened to end the 2023 season, right? So let's just put that to the side and assess where we're at right now. I think that Sharon is learning a lot as a head coach that he didn't know, right? Like it's the same thing of, every head coach, the first time that they do anything, every quarterback, the first time that they go out there and take a snap, they're learning things, right? And so experience matters a ton. And so I'm excited for what Sharon can bring to the table, and hopefully, some of those clock management and just in-game type stuff, hopefully he can improve on that. Hopefully after going through a full year and having some time, right? He didn't have any time. He was thrown into the fire in mid-February last year and immediately had to go figure out, all right, how do I keep Mason Graham and Will Johnson and Colson Loveland, and how do I not have them hit the portal? Who's my quarterback? What's going on? Like, it probably felt like a whirlwind for him. So I think right now he's going to have a few months to kind of figure some shit out, and it'll be good for Michigan going forward. And honestly, they've already figured a lot out in terms of recruiting. To your point, his coach, he's got some coaches that are unbelievable at recruiting, and then just in the portal, to go get, I'll list off the list right now of who they've received, because really, I mean, let's be honest, they've lost a few linemen that really didn't impact that much. Dom Jadis probably was the guy that was involved the most. And then of course Orji is in the portal, hasn't declared anywhere right yet. And then Tyler Morris, he just declared heading to Indiana. We completed the trade with Indiana for Donovan McCulley, but ultimately, I'm not that worried about what Michigan lost in the portal. I'm more focusing on what they're getting. And so I'll just run down it right now. At QB, Mikey Keene, running back, Justice Haynes, you mentioned him. That is going to be an unbelievable addition.
We didn't even talk about Jordan Marshall's game against Alabama.
Jordan Marshall in that Bama game was like
a true freshman who didn't play a lot because he was hurt.
It barely played at all this year.
That run he had to get that, I believe it was when it was 16-10, and it put them up 2 scores when our boy Zavada nailed it through the uprights. But he had like a 20, 25-yard run where he just sunned a dude and just kept. I mean, it's very Cormy, right? Like a little bit. He's not as big.
I don't want to put that on him. Like, I want to say it, but I don't want to put that on him because that's like,
he's not going to listen to this.
I just don't want that narrative to be out there, but
unfortunately, his high school film was the jump cut, the vision, the ability to put your shoulder down. He brings all that to the table. He's not as compact as Blake Corum was. I mean, Blake was like 5'10", 200 pounds. I would see Blake Corum, like I saw him at Panera when he was like a junior, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this man is like, what is going on, Blake? So I don't think Jordan Marshall is that big of a dude, but like you see it, right? So you pair him with Justice Haynes. Depending on what Penn State running backs do in the offseason, if they go to the draft or whatever, like that's probably the best combo if you're basing off potential. Because I think Justice Haynes was misused a little bit at Bama. I don't know if Kalen DeBoer is the most running back friendly offensive guy.
Yeah.
So you have two. I mean, we saw what he could do, though. He ran for a big touchdown against Michigan in the Rose Bowl in 2024. So, yeah, I think with those two, that's a pretty dynamic duo that I'm excited about, especially with how good the offensive line played, comparatively to, throughout the season. So,
yep. So, and then we get wide receiver Donovan McCulley. And then on the offensive line, you get two non-FBS guys, which is kind of shocking, right? You get Lawrence Hatter from Ferris State, 3-time national champ, Tony Anise approved, I am sure. Huge dude, 6'5", 330 or something like that.
D2 All-American last year.
D2 All-American. I love that. And then Brady Norton from Cal Poly. I think those are the guys that are going to be your guards probably. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think that it changes the way the line I was worried about it a month ago. I'm not that worried about it now. So excited about that. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Trey Williams, Damon Payne, Troy Bowles is at linebacker. That's a big pickup from Georgia. Trey Williams is from Clemson, Damon Payne from Bama, Tevis Metcalf, and TJ Metcalf, both from Arkansas. So
cousins of DK.
And cousins. I mean, that's not a bad thing to be cousins of the biggest athletic freak out there.
Yeah. So, by the way, I just have to say, I'm very interested in 247's portal rankings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like a guy like Troy Bowles, right, who was a high four-star coming out of high school, I believe in 2023, top 100, number 67 player in the country, goes to Georgia, where Georgia maybe is the best, is LBU, right? Like we talk about wide receiver U and QBU and RBU and all this stuff, but like they're LBU.
Yeah. And
so he doesn't see the field as by the end of his true sophomore year, and he's ranked as like a middling 3-star. But like if you look at last year, there were Dante Moore was ranked ahead of Cam Ward. What are we? Aiden Childs was ranked ahead of Cam Ward. So I just find it funny, a guy that was a big, because you base, what 247 does is they base it on NFL potential. Like, I don't think anything Troy Bowles has done is going to knock him down to like an 85 rating when he was like a 97 or whatever. So it doesn't matter, but I just find it very funny. So anybody that's like a stargazer, like I typically can be, sometimes you just got to have some perspective. Like, he didn't see the field, but why? It's not because he wasn't necessarily good. It's because look at the dudes that are in front of it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I mean, I think rankings matter at the end of the day. You want higher ranked guys. You have a better chance of winning when you have a higher ranked guys and more talent on the field. At the end of the day, you do have to take it with a grain of salt, right? You have to look at it in a 360 view. But ultimately, I'm pretty excited. I think the only issue that Michigan is still that would still be the concern is wide receiver. I feel pretty comfortable with where we're at with everything else. I mean, maybe D tackle, maybe defensive line, but you get Payne and you get Trey Williams. They're not going to be all-stars. They're not Mason and KG, but they give you a ton of depth and big bodies there, which is good. I mean, wide receiver, though, it's a little concerning because we're losing out on even, can't even land. I don't want to say can't even, but they missed out on landing Skylar Bell from UConn, right? So if you can't get a guy to come over from UConn, I think there's a reason to be concerned a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I will say this room is a hell of a lot better than whatever was going on last year, I think.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, who knows how much of that was truly just the lack of being able to throw the ball downfield, right? Like, is Samaj, because, you think about what I thought about Samaj Morgan coming into last year, right? Like, he catches a back shoulder fade against Rutgers from JJ McCarthy. You're like, whoa, this guy's not a slot guy. But then the only opportunities he got were like in gadget type plays. And remember the USC game? Remember the USC game? He's on a seam route, wide ass open.
Yes.
Just waving his hands and nobody gets him. So, is it, I don't know, maybe coaches obviously know more. I'd like to get 2 more bodies in that room, to be perfectly honest with you. But, I wonder, we did like, I think it was for Scott Bell's Substack, where he asked you and you sent it to me, so I filled it out. But I thought, like, my breakout freshman last year, I just went on a limb and I said Amarion Stewart. I really like this high school film, right? So what does he have in the tank? Like, what can he provide to the offense? So there's a lot of potential. There's not a lot of proven production outside of McCauley, which last year he was hurt. 2023 he was really good after switching from quarterback to receiver at IU. So and then Andrew Marsh coming in as a true freshman is a stud. A lot of people are excited about Jamar Browder. That dude looks like there's a picture of him and Andrew Babalola. He looks bigger than Babalola.
I know.
So these freshman receivers, maybe change the dynamic for the coaching staff of like, hey, we don't need X amount of guys.
Well, and you saw what Fred Moore did against Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, okay, can we do that more? Like, this year, obviously, you struggle with having people that can throw the ball down the field, but we didn't even try. Until Alabama, we didn't even try to do a back shoulder fade to anybody.
When's the last time Michigan threw a downfield shot? Like, was it literally Alex Orji against Arkansas State? Remember that one he overthrew? And it was like, oh, well, maybe it's better. Maybe we get better.
I said to you guys at Pretzel when we were watching the Alabama game, just talking about everything, I was like, dude, even if nobody's open, can we just chuck it deep to make them think that we want to try to do that?
I've been saying that since like Minnesota. Like, like just throw it down, downfield. I don't know.
One of my friends that I was watching a game with during at Michigan Stadium this year he had the funniest thing. He's like, honestly, I need them to throw it just so my neck will go like this. And
my neck's tight.
I'm getting a kink in my neck. Can I turn and look at the ball going downfield to stretch it out?
As long as it's not like Jared Goff going deep to JMO last night. It's just like, I'll take it.
That was the one head scratcher of that game. But everything else, I had a very good time watching that game.
Yeah. But so Portal, they're still working on some guy. I will say I love what they're doing on the defensive line. I hope that's not indicative of which way Rayshon Benning's leaning.
Yeah.
Sure would have loved for him to come back. I thought he had another stellar performance. That guy, I think he could probably make himself some even more money if he came back next year and potentially becomes a big
agree. And I think Trey Williams and Damon Payne, I think they're rotational guys. You need 8 guys on that line, right? And so that's kind of where I am at. What are your thoughts on the quarterback situation? That's going to be the thing that everybody talks about. I'm sure we'll talk about it from now until August, until September, but right now you're looking at it without seeing you've seen Bryce Underwood in a Michigan uniform for 30 seconds in a bunch of clips.
Best quarterback we've had since JJ.
And he looks the part, right? You go out there and we were, in person with him at Somerset Mall. He definitely is all of 6'5". There's no
I'd never. We went and did that event, and we've got some content coming from that, which was. I will say one thing I'll share is Justin, you introduced me to Mason Graham. He's like, "Hey man, I'm Mason." And I was like, "I know, brother." Everybody, but it's everybody that did that. By the way, I'm the biggest fan of Donovan Edwards. I don't know if you remember this, Justin. He was for sure trying to get the hell out of there. There were beat reporters trying to talk to him, and you went up and introduced me, and he was the coolest, most kind dude and super gracious. So always be a fan of Dono. But yeah, so it was when we were there, I was like, damn, he's a big kid, man. And then you see him out on the field in those clips, and you're like, holy shit. He is big. He's standing next to Alex Orji, and he is just a big dude, right?
And I want to preface what we're saying right now with an example, because you look at what wow, how am I blanking on the name? This we're gonna have to cut this, but who started for the Patriots yesterday?
Oh, Joe Milton.
You look at what
we don't need to cut that. That's fine. You suppressed 2020 from your brain, and that's okay.
I did tweet about it. It was just a total mind blank there. But you look at Joe Milton. I laughed because I saw a tweet today that multiple NFL teams are looking at Joe Milton for a starting QB.
Dude, I was watching Red Zone, and he rolls out of the pocket, finds a wide open receiver, zips it there, and I'm like, this is what I thought was going to happen.
So my point being, you can't be just mesmerized by a big guy and a big arm, because there's obviously there's a lot more to being a quarterback than that. But if we can just start there, he looks the part. And
Yes.
I want to say this. I'll let you chime in here in a second, but I just want to tell everybody, remind everybody, JJ McCarthy did not look the part when he came in here. He was tiny. He was a little pull of a human being and was not ready. He didn't look anything like Bryce Underwood did. And obviously he turned into, possibly the greatest quarterback at the University of Michigan. But I'm just saying Bryce Underwood right now looks game ready. And if you're worried about his development, you shouldn't be.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And I think to the point about Joe Milton, like I watched Joe Milton's film, you could see it, right? But if you look at his high school stats, he didn't have a great completion percentage. You're basing a lot of it off of potential. And you're doing the same thing with Bryce Underwood, but like you hear the way folks that have been in attendance at these, elite high school camps and 7-on-7 environments, but then you watch the way he plays football. He can throw it with touch. Like I think that was the biggest thing for Joe Milton was like he just fired everything in there, right? Like there was really no ability to level the football in.
He can throw that 40-yard rope that he did for the Patriots yesterday, and then you ask him to throw like a 7-yard out, and he's still going to throw that 40-yard rope.
Yeah, which, by the way, this is completely off topic. I can't believe that Anthony Richardson was the number 4 pick in the draft, and Joe Milton was like a 6th or 7th rounder. Because they're the same guys, right? But with Bryce, I think, I mean, as far as just the quarterback situation goes, you bring in Mikey Keene, who we saw. I mean, if you went to the game against Fresno State, you saw him in person already. He's got familiarity with Chip Lindsey. Chip Lindsey was the offensive coordinator at UCF when Mikey Keene was there as coming out of high school as a recruit who's there for a couple of years and then transferred to Fresno State. Mikey Keene has put up decent stats the last couple of years at Fresno. I don't know how much he moves the needle for me. I think his ability, he's already gone in to hostile environments before, coming to the big house, right, with Fresno last year. I'm sure he's played some other big road games. I haven't looked it up. But just thinking about going into Oklahoma, but who knows? I mean, they've got a new quarterback, a new OC, but like how hyped are those folks for Oklahoma football under Brett Venables, right? So like how hostile is it going to be? But I think you're probably, your thought process is, okay, we've got a guy who's in his 5th year of college football at this point, coming in, who's going to kind of keep us steady and allow us to maybe be in a dogfight and not make mistakes like a true freshman would. No matter how good the true freshman is. I think what I'm probably hoping for is that Michigan's able to win those games first and foremost. I mean, that's obvious. But what I think I'm hoping for is that Michigan's able to get through. I think they go to Lincoln, Nebraska in September. It's early in the season in the Big Ten schedule. That's another tough place. I don't think people realize, like, if you've never been there, that place gets loud. Even at 23, when Michigan beat them by 38 points, like they were loud until it was like,
and they're going to be hyped, going into year whatever. Is this year 2 of Raiola, right?
Yeah, year 2 of Raiola, year 3 of Matt Rule. So they got Dane Key from Kentucky. They've made some splashes. So that's going to be a tough game. But I think you're probably hoping to get through those games with Mikey Keene. I think eventually the talent will be inevitable, and there's just no way you keep them off the field. I think that's what will happen. I think, here, Justin, who do you think will be the starter going into Ohio State?
I'll do you one better. I definitely think Bryce Underwood will be the starter going into Ohio State, but I actually, even though I do like Mikey Keene, I think he's your safeguard. I think that Bryce Underwood will start game 1. That's how I feel. I feel that you obviously put a significant financial, interest in him, right? And you've only got a 3-year window here with him. So yeah, I think that unless he goes into camp, unless he's in spring ball, has a bad spring game, and then goes into August camp, and it's like really obvious that he's not ready, then they'll go with Mikey Keene. But I think if there's any inkling that he can go win you football games, and if he's making unbelievable plays, I think that he's going to start. And honestly, I think that's the right decision for really one reason. How much better was JJ McCarthy in 2023 than 2022? I think it
Very.
was significant,
It,
right?
it was. It
And it
was. You
was
could tell
and
immediately.
in my opinion, like he did evolve physically. He like almost went into a growth spurt going from his sophomore to junior year, but most of it was experience. He went through a full season as a starting quarterback.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think even if you have some rough patches, you want Bryce Underwood to start in 2025 so that he can get those games. And then you have at least, like, let's say there are some rough patches of 2025. You have 2 years then of him with experience to go try and win a national title. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that for sure. Yeah, I think when you think about 2022 JJ versus 2023, I think it was just so much more decisive in his decision making. When the ball, he always had the arm talent, right? I mean, you saw that from his first game. I mean, I remember sitting there in the big house, like this dude just throw across his body on the run for a touchdown. It landed perfectly in Dalen Baldwin's hands. Like, all right, sure. But yeah, I think you could just tell that mentally he was so much further along because of having started a full year of football. So I'm totally with that. I think, and maybe that's also part of the strategy of like, hey, like, and I kind of go back and forth on this because I think the schedule is so favorable in 2025, right? Like you go to, or you have Ohio State come to the big house, you go to Oklahoma, you go to Lincoln. Trying to think, we did a whole damn show on this. It's been a couple weeks now,
But
but
let me just say something on the Oklahoma game specifically. Yes, that is going to be a hyped up game. It's going to be a crazy environment. At the end of the day, though, you can lose that game and you still have a chance. You're not losing a conference game, right? And looking at how the CFP panned out, there's a chance that you can still go 10-2, right? You still can lose a game in the Big Ten, maybe two, depending on what happens here, and still make the college football.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the way this playoffs has worked out this year, like, are they going to be as willing to put in, a 2-loss ACC team in the future, right? I mean, all these things. So, obviously the auto bids and all that stuff. We don't have to get into that, but yeah, I think part of the reason, to your point about the development of Bryce Underwood and where this program will be in 26 and 27 is maybe you're content with, maybe being a little selective this year, knowing that in 26 and 27 you're going to spend big in the portal, right? And it's like, okay, then I would agree with that. The only thing again is that schedule sets up to where you can win 11 or 12 games, right? With a couple more pieces, this could be an undefeated football team. I still think this team right now is probably 10-2. I don't know where those two come, but this is going to be, again, a really good football team. I think a lot of guys showed a lot in that bowl game defensively, especially. I think with Wink, another full year of college football under his belt. It's hard not to be excited, but yeah, I think it all just comes down to the quarterback. And I mean, how we saw a true freshman, Trevor Lawrence, take over after, I think, the 5th game and go undefeated and win a national championship with Clemson. Now, do we have a Justin Ross or a T. Higgins? No. So that's not. Right. That's the one downside where you're not going and finding those guys. But who knows? I mean, Justin Ross, I think, was the same class. Both T. Higgins and Justin Ross were the same class as Trevor Lawrence. So maybe Andrew Marsh is that kind of guy. Maybe Jamar Browder. Maybe Jacob Washington out of Louisiana. Like you just don't know. So maybe they've seen enough. I don't know. But I would still like another receiver or two, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. So, all right. So a lot of portal activity, not quite done yet. There are still a couple of those receivers, as you're mentioning, that it looks like are trending towards Michigan, but we don't know quite yet. And then I think I'll be interested to see the spring portal this year. Because in the past, the spring portal has been like leftover guys, right? But I think that the way that NIL continues to evolve, you just saw who was the guy that was that committed, 5-star committed, and then already hit the portal. I can't remember. He's going to Oregon now, I believe, right?
Oh, the quarterback?
Yeah.
He was committed to Cal for a long time. He was a guy that Devin Gardner was. I think Devin Gardner worked with him at a camp or something and was like, this guy. This was before Michigan had Bryce, so he was like, you guys got to recruit him, and Michigan didn't. Blows up, becomes a 5-star. I'm not gonna. His name's Jaron. Okay, I think his first name's Jaron. I'm not gonna try to pronounce either of his other names. But
Anyway,
so he goes to he's committed to Cal, signs with Oregon, and is in the portal to go back to Cal.
so that's my point of the spring portal. I think these teams with tampering, there are no rules right around that currently. Well, there are, but nobody enforces it.
I mean, are there any rules left, right?
And so my point being with the spring portal, I'll be interested because I think a lot of teams are going to continue to recruit guys that have already signed and practiced with teams all spring. And so it's not just going to be the leftovers anymore. I think you're going to see some significant guys still flip because they're, somebody's going to come in with a bigger bag at some point. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, I think one thing that we've obviously, this is like the X factor, in my opinion, to Michigan's season this upcoming season. Yeah, you've got Bryce Underwood. Yeah, you've got a good old line now. I think you've got two really good running backs. But how good is Chip Lindsey? I don't know that this is like the splash hire that everyone, I don't know if you were ever going to get that, but I don't think it's good. I don't think it's bad. I don't know if it's, I don't know. Well, I don't know where I'm at. Where's your head at?
I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes as an offensive coordinator, you're only as good as your players. But there were also moments in 2024 where I was just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. Like we talked pre-show about the Oregon game where Michigan should have been down 31-24 with like 7 minutes left. And on fourth down, they I think they had Samaj try to throw it to Alex Orji.
And then Alex Orji almost killed himself on a camera.
Yeah, because the ball was 10 yards out of bounds. And it's like people were mad at Samaj. And I'm like, dude, so I think a lot of it depends on the personnel. But what you hear Drake May say about Chip Lindsey is that he was the best coordinator he had in college and helped him develop into a better quarterback in 1 year than anybody had before. So, Drake May's stats went down his junior year or his redshirt sophomore year at UNC, whatever. I think that's a good sign from just hearing somebody like Drake May, who was the third pick in the draft, right? So, yeah, man, I don't know. I just think, he's going to have a lot more tools at his disposal than Kirk did last year. So it's going to be hard to really judge. I don't care. I just would like to see a downfield passing offense. It is 2025. It is not 1925, right? So yep. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there were any true big fish out there, to your point. Like, I don't know who you could have gotten. I know there's the dude from the Lions who's the pass game coordinator, Tanner Estrand, I think is his name. Elite first name, truthfully. But like, what are you gonna do? Sit there and wait for the Lions to get through their playoff run?
Yeah,
right.
You can't. You have to make a move,
right? So you're kind of limited in those moments of especially if you're trying to look towards the NFL. You're really, unless they're, everything lines up, like you're kind of SOL as far as picking from the NFL. And then in college, I mean, is there anybody that really blows you away? Right.
I agree with that. That's why like I'm indifferent a little bit. I don't think he was a splash hire, but I don't know that anybody was a splash hire.
Right. Maybe like Denbrock from Notre Dame, but like, again, like, would he come here? First of all, and second of all, they're in the midst of the Final Four run, right? So it's like, you're kind of hamstrung, but like, you can't take forever. You have to go and find somebody out there. And it's not like he was fired from North Carolina. I mean, Mac Brown was fired for being old, and then they hired somebody just as old. So like, I don't know, dude. College football is crazy, but yeah, like, I don't know if there was going to be any hire that they made where I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, ultimately, I think, I know that this kind of got a bit of flack on Twitter and whatever, but Bryce Underwood, if he's good with it, then, I'm not putting all my chips on what a 17-year-old thinks, but ultimately I want him to be comfortable. He's the future. And so I think if he's good with it, I'm good with it. I think you want to let's try to get a balanced attack back. And I think too, like, what I would want out of this, I want Sharon Moore to continue or get back to, I don't know exactly how much involvement he had in the offense in 2024, but he was a damn good offensive coordinator from 21 to 23, right? Yeah. So like, I want that offense back where, and maybe it's even a little bit more dynamic because Bryce Underwood's even faster than JJ was, and he's, he is more okay to run with than JJ.
Yeah, he's better equipped to handle what comes with running the football as a quarterback in the Big Ten.
For sure. And so ultimately, I'm just looking for a dynamic offense here.
Yeah, I don't even need 50-50. Like, I just like 40-60, you know, like a couple deep shots.
It can't be 80-20 is the point.
No, I mean, sometimes you can beat teams doing that. I don't know what teams, but you can beat certain teams doing that.
You can beat certain teams by doing
Can we? So let's talk about the college football playoff and how it's for all Michigan fans just a personal hell. Like literally, everything you didn't want to happen has happened.
Yes.
Penn State has won 2 games. Notre Dame has won 2 games. Ohio State has won 2 games, and you're just like sitting there like shit. But the solace that I take, I would hate it. Absolutely hate. Well, no, it's not the worst possible because if Michigan State was the other 4th, it was the 4th team, that would be the worst possible outcome. But for this specific,
thankfully, they don't really take football seriously.
Yes, I'm sure that will go over well if any Michigan State fans listen to us. But the thing that I will take solace with, and you know what, our boy Connor Muldowney kind of roasted me on this one because I bought in 2021 a Michigan Big Ten championship pint glass, which is behind me somewhere. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know, somewhere they're back there.
Yeah,
right there. The one has the Kenneth Walker game on it and the score, and it's like, all right. But so if they win, they're gonna have memorabilia with 1310 on it.
Thickstowski's put out there. He's like, I will buy that Ohio State Natty mug with it on there because I agree. Like I've told you this before. There's a sicko down deep inside of me
I don't agree.
That wants them to win just because of that. It's not my real self. It's just there's like a little devil inside of me that's saying that. But
it's tough. We had this conversation in our group chat. One of us, not you or I or Kalen, was saying that he was rooting for Ohio State. And I said, brother, you were sick in the head. And he's like, no, it's hilarious because Michigan beat them. I'm like, I don't care, dude. That is a trump card, right?
It would be, I guess, the best way for me to put it is, like that's the silver lining if it happens.
Right? Yeah. Otherwise, it's like the worst possible because I've always said, and people are always like, oh, keep Ryan Day. And it's like, dude, I know Michigan has his brain in a pretzel. Totally understand that. But just from like a rooting against Ohio State, every possible opportunity I get, like firing Ryan Day would be a bad move. Because I selfishly want him just gone. I hope he takes an NFL job. He says, F you guys, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because and it is unique to Michigan and Ohio State, where these are the 2 universities that put the most emphasis on that singular game. There's no other programs in the country that have this. Even Alabama, Auburn. Like Auburn beat Alabama the one year, and Alabama won the national championship. And I was like, okay. But for this one though, I do think that if they won the national championship, it would still feel a little hollow for them. And you would still, because we know what it's like to not beat Ohio State. Like regardless of what happens after that, obviously Michigan has won national championship without beating Ohio State. Just built different over here. Michigan beats their rivals and wins the trophies. But like it would just feel super hollow and empty, right? Yeah. So but that would still be a trump card for them, and it would help with recruiting. It would just help with so many different things. Like I wanted them to lose to Tennessee because I wanted it all to fall apart, and I think it would have. But Tennessee and the SEC. What are your thoughts? Because I've been bashing the SEC lately. Like I wasn't rooting for Notre Dame, but I used their win as an opportunity to make fun of the SEC. I'm so sick of hearing about the SEC and like how good they are, and like they should have been left out. And then Alabama loses to Michigan. Tennessee gets rolled. Honestly, Georgia got their ass beat.
Yeah,
like it wasn't really that close.
I know that what's his name wasn't playing, but they didn't look like they wanted to be there, and it was the college football playoff. It was such
I don't know, man. It was a weird game in general with the tragedy that it unfolded on the first. Like it was just so crazy. I don't know, crazy couple days down there in New Orleans. But yeah, I don't know. And then Texas,
in Texas, but like Texas is not a real SEC
exactly.
Team. They're the one left. SEC, and if you ask any of those real like true SEC teams, the Bamas, the Auburns, the whatever, they hated Texas even when they joined. They were like, no, you're fake. You and Oklahoma, you're frauds.
And right? The last one standing. They're a Big 12 team.
It's hilarious. I mean, my take on the SEC is I know a lot of people have chirped that, oh, you're broke, and you can't pay players. I think that's real. I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
did.
genuinely real that these teams have been paying players for a long time under the table, long
Yeah.
time, and they've been doing it better. If any Northern teams were doing it at all, they've been doing it better, and
Yeah.
so they were able to keep a lot of talent down there. Now with the portal and with NIL, every team has at least a fair shot at recruits, right?
Yeah, well, and I think you think about the SEC in general. You think about the Texas schools; they got a ton of oil money, right? So
Right.
they're going to be good. That's why A&M's class was so ridiculous a couple of years ago. And Texas is recruited at a very high level under Steve Sarkisian. So I think they've got it figured out. So I think Texas A&M is going to be a team that we're going to start seeing in this playoff more and more. I like Mike Elko, but when you look at like Auburn, Alabama, like where's the like you basically have a bunch of teams that just have like dealerships across the
It used to,
state,
well,
right?
dude, a Hellcat used to get you a
Absolutely.
5-star, man, and
Now
so
they want 10 Hellcats.
they,
So you think about the Alabama schools, you think about the Mississippi schools. I mean, Ole Miss has still kind of been, I think Ole Miss has surprisingly been one of the more NIL, like elite NIL schools. Like they go kill it in the portal every year, but they don't win on the field. Georgia, like, yeah, University of Georgia is a fantastic school, and in Atlanta and Athens and that metro area is a very wealthy part of the country for the most part. So I don't know. I think they'll continue to probably be, but like you think about Auburn, Alabama specifically, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see because basically they were just using like a network of dealerships to get these guys, and now that's like the low hanging fruit for these guys. Like, oh
well,
yeah,
and
I'm expecting you to get a vehicle now.
it used to be like, hey, you get a car and then like play well and we'll have like $5,000 for you, right? And now it's like you need $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So it's just different. If you're a Friday Night Lights guy, like the Buddy Garrity's of the world, don't like that doesn't cut it. And I feel like that's the SEC is they've got like 20 Buddy Garrity's, but they all like they are. Then I don't know if I ever told you this, but the reason why Texas is different at Pretzel Bell at our podcast, I met the Lamborghini dealer owner of Austin.
Was he the guy putting it out for the videos?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We should have gotten him in touch with my friend Steve that came up that played ball there because we
that's
talked
right.
about when that photo shoot dropped. I called him like, what's going on? He's like, he was like an 06 or 07 recruit. Like he went there right after Vince Young played. One of my friends played football at Texas, and he's like we used to just go for the love of the Longhorns. Not what he said, but basically. That is hilarious though, man. Like
yeah. So I mean, that's my point though. Is like I think at Bama you had a couple like Ford and Chevy
dealerships, Jeep.
Yeah, and then in Austin, it's like, yeah, we have Lamborghini dealers here. So it's just a different world. So, anyways, ultimately though, okay, with this CFP, yes, worst possible 4 teams, except for if MSU was in it somehow.
I don't mind Texas.
I don't mind Texas either. That's probably who you're rooting for, right? Especially you're rooting for them to beat Ohio State, no doubt.
Are you rooting for them to win it all?
Yeah, for sure. I actually call me crazy. I don't mind Notre Dame. If it was Brian Kelly, I would hate them, but
I didn't grow up in Indiana.
I know I didn't grow up in Indiana, and I think if you're an older person listening to this, like then Notre Dame was a much bigger rival then. We haven't played them in a while. We have pretty much dominated that rivalry since for the last 10, 15 years. Outside of maybe a couple years, right? But
yeah, it was like from like 03 on, I think it was 03. Like I think they resumed the series in 03. There was a bit of a hiatus. I think they won a majority of those games, or like they were above 500. So yeah, there was a couple of years where they would get Michigan, but for the most part, like Michigan was kind of dominant.
I like Freeman. Like he doesn't.
I know.
I like him, and like.
He's a Buckeye. Like, how likable do you have to be for a Michigan fan to be like,
I know, man.
Head coach in Notre Dame, played college football at Ohio State.
He's a good-looking dude too. It's tough,
Yeah.
It's
beautiful
tough.
family. Seems like a great dude. No, I'm with you on that, but I still can't.
I know I still can't. I'm still going to root for Texas. The thing that I just most don't want is either Ryan Day or James Franklin to be able to have a national title. Like I, I cannot have. They're weenies. They don't deserve it.
You know, the thought of James Franklin winning a national championship just makes me sick. Like they wanted him fired the last like 3 years.
He's the most undeserving out of the four by far.
I think Notre Dame is a much better team.
I just think that, like, you look at, I mean, even though Notre Dame is a bunch of weenies for not joining a conference, and now they like it's still turning out to be a good thing to not be in a conference, which is crazy to me. But like outside of what was it, 2016 when Penn State won the on the block kick, won the Big Ten, like they haven't sniffed a Big Ten championship, haven't been able to beat Michigan or Ohio State when it mattered ever, right? Like they're the most undeserving. They're the only reason that they're in this is because they backdoored their way because of because of expanded playoff, and then they got Boise and Arizona State, and it's just like, come on, man. I don't know how them getting the 5 seed is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you play, dude, and honestly, SMU, like, I don't remember what the score was, but like, they were moving the ball in the first drive. They missed a touchdown on a 4th and 2, and then like they just turned it over a bunch. They had a chance to make it 14-7. They were in the red zone or down near the end of the Penn State end of the field. Throw a pick, like, and then they played Boise, and like, yeah, it was hands to the face, but Boise gets a touchdown call back. Would have been a 3-point game, and you're just like, I will say I see the vision with Drew Aller. I think he should go to the draft personally.
I think he's good.
Like you can see the physical traits, and it's starting to click for him. Like he's honestly, I'm impressed. I was not impressed last year. This year, I get it. The talent is there. He's matured. But yeah, the thought of, God, Sark, I need you, Quinn. I would play Arch Manning personally. I think Arch Manning would win these games. I don't know.
That would be incredible if they just threw Arch Manning in there.
Every time I watch Texas and Arch Manning's in the game, I'm like, wow, look at that throw. It's a perfect spiral. And it's like, oh shit, he's a Manning. So yeah, he's gonna throw a perfect spiral, but then he can also run. And not just run, he's like Trevor Lawrence athletic. Like
he's like 6'6",
really athletic.
240 too.
Yeah. Like and obviously he's a Manning, so he's gonna be smart as hell when it comes to football. And it's like, yeah. So I don't know. I don't think they'll do Quinn Ewers dirty like that. I mean, he has taken him to the playoffs in two out of the last 2 years, but I think Arch would win the national championship. I don't know if Quinn will. So
I agree with that. I don't know. I mean, I am still excited to watch. I will be hate watching Ohio State heavily, and definitely hate watching Penn State.
I don't want to watch that game. The Notre Dame Penn State game is just gross, man.
That doesn't give me
for a shot at the national championship. Like, I'll tell you what, Georgia had the chance to do the funniest thing and just beat all of Michigan's rivals, and then just didn't do it.
Yeah,
which sucks because like 21 Georgia would have smoked these fools, but they don't have it. And back to that conversation earlier, like they can't stockpile the talent anymore because these guys will leave and go get money elsewhere, right? So you don't have the depth, you don't have the ability to just like get the best players and then figure out which ones develop. So, but yeah, I'll be rooting for the Big 12. University of Texas in the playoffs.
Not the SEC Texas.
No, they're still a Big 12 team. Come on.
Still a Big 12 team for a few more years. All right. So we're an hour into this podcast, but let's talk about Michigan hoops for a minute here before we sign off. We'll definitely have more hoops coverage, I think, as this was a lot about the post Bama game, the portal, a lot of that stuff, but Dusty's squad is looking real good, man. I'm excited about this team. Danny Wolf is looking incredible. They're coming off of a big win at USC. USC is not like atop the Big Ten by any means, but winning at USC, Musselman is a great coach in my opinion. I feel like Michigan's a good team. They're like, and they're built for the tournament. I really like what's going on right now.
Yeah, man. I may have an aneurysm, in the middle of these games.
Oh my God.
I gotta say this. It's similar to, so my uncle and I just text throughout games, whether it's Michigan or the Lions, and I just feel like similar to Jahmyr Gibbs. Like I'm just like, Gibbs is a stud. I just say that every time he does something crazy. Like I'm running out of words and out of adjectives to describe Danny Wolf. It's just It's unbelievable at this point.
Yeah.
Like some of the ways he's able to finish at the rim is just like
A
for a
7 footer,
footer
7 footer should not be able to do
off
the
the
things that he
bounce,
does.
like the things that he's able to do. Hit him defensively. He had I think 5 or 6 blocks.
6 blocks, which was the most since 2008 or something like that.
Epke Udo.
Crazy.
I always forget. Every time I'm reminded, I'm like, oh yeah, I always forget that he played at Michigan.
That's a name drop for sure. Yeah, man, I feel good. I feel like Vlad has like, those first few games, he couldn't buy a bucket around the rim. He has really calmed down and came into his own, which I like. Trey Donaldson played really well. I think Namari is coming around, so the guard play has gotten better. I think Roddy Gale and Reuben Jones need to still figure some stuff out themselves. But I'm liking the rotation. I feel like, Michigan going into Big Ten play right now, so they'll we're recording this on Monday night. If you're listening tomorrow on Tuesday, Michigan plays tonight, I guess, at UCLA, which is a big game. UCLA is ranked 22nd. Michigan just came in at 24th in the AP poll. So that's a big game. At some point, to your point with the aneurysm thing, like they're going to have to figure out how to not go into stretches where, they went from up 15 to tied within 5 minutes of play.
Yeah. And a lot of that's just unforced errors. Like, you want to see Reuben Jones kind of figure it out. But at the same time, like, I mean, he had I think 2 straight turnovers on 2 possessions where it just led to 4 or 5 points for USC. And it's like they tied it. And it's just like, it's just no point. There's no reason. I forgive Danny Wolf on a lot of his turnovers because he's trying to make a play. And sometimes it's not the best decision, but like, hey, sometimes the ball gets away from you or you see it, you're not on the same page as your teammate because you think they're cutting, but they're actually coming back out to the top of the key. So it goes into the stands or whatever. But like a lot of these are just very unforced. And when it's from like just making a lazy pass, I can't do it. Right. Like I wasn't very good at basketball. I was okay. I played like JV. I'm not great. Yeah. But like, just watching the game my whole life and, being from the state of Indiana basketball and, I know the sport a little bit. And it's like, I just don't like when those turnovers come from a place of being lackadaisical with the ball. Like the cross court passes, I feel like have been kind of slowed down a little bit. They're not doing that as often, but there's just so many times where it's like there was no need to do that. So if they can figure that, I think people are like, oh, this team has a late game problem. I don't really think so. I think it's just that the turnovers and the missed free throws also that needs to get cleaned up. But I think those things compound and they really rear their head in the later parts of the game. That's where you see it kind of come out, unfortunately. So
yeah, I do think that they can get a little bit more mentally tough. I think that when a couple things go wrong, they got to be able to bounce back better. Right now, they're letting it get to their head, and 1 or 2 errors turns into 4, 5, 6. Right. Yeah. And so if they can clean that up,
they have that though, right? Like, you put yourself in a situation, but like against Arkansas, they're up big and then they were getting blown out and then they come back and they almost, have a chance to tie it at the buzzer. And then, the Oklahoma game, I kind of erased that from my memory. But I feel like that was another game where it's like they were up and then Oklahoma took the lead, but they hung around and they should have won that game. And so it's like one of those things where, they kind of have it. But yeah, I mean, undefeated in the Big Ten at this point, they're averaging 84 points a game. So like their offensively,
shooting percentage is
the threes ever since we went to the Purdue Fort Wayne game, almost my alma mater, shout out the Macedons, great school down there at Fort Wayne. Yes, because they found a Mastodon at Fort Wayne way back in the day. I think that's the story. But yeah, when we went to that game, man, they just shot lights out, and then same thing against Western Kentucky, and then it continued against USC. So you're not going to shoot that way. Second half, they kind of slowed down a little bit. But
what I loved about that, real quick, is when they did. So they shot lights out in the first half, then they didn't shoot lights out in the second half, but they went straight to the paint. And we're able to.
Yes, they're very good. They're very good at doing that. Like, there's been multiple games where shots aren't falling, and so it really just becomes Danny Wolf and Vlad just doing a 2-man game and getting to the rim, right?
I also like, dude. I keep thinking I'm getting ahead of myself. It's only January 6th right now, but I keep thinking about March. Like, who in the tournament's going to be able to stop them with like 2 days to prep? Like I just don't know who's going to stop 2 7-footers doing that pick and roll. I feel like we can do it 100 times in a row.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, we got to get there first, but I think Michigan's. I'll tell you what, they may be 24th in the AP poll. I could tell you though, I'm the analytics, like the advanced statistics,
Ken
like,
Pom.
love like Ken Pom, Bart Torvik, like all I don't know what their net ranking is, but like they love Michigan.
Yeah.
And if they could clean up the turnovers, they would, because I think the most recent I saw in Ken Pom, they were 11th a couple days ago. I don't know what they are now. It was before the USC game. But man, if they figure out a way to clean up the turnovers, because that's, not just accounting for the points you miss out on, they score in transition a lot of times, right? Or get your defense out of position and they're able to put up a shot that's a favorable look. So, yeah, I'm very excited about this basketball team. Somebody's asking me about Dusty May that's not a Michigan fan the other day. I was on a work call and, we're just, every time I drive past the Crossing Center, man, that UConn's in there. That guy is grinding.
He's a dog. He's a workhorse for sure. Michigan is at 13th in the net rankings. They're the only team above them in the Big Ten is Illinois at 7th. UCLA is 18th. Who, like I said, they're playing.
Yeah, this would be a Q1 win, right?
Yeah, so, big time quad 1 win, which would be great. And I think the only thing about this, it's a Tuesday 10 p.m. Eastern game because you're playing at UCLA midweek. So welcome to the new Big Ten, I guess.
It's at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw up. I can barely stay up for the 9 o'clock games,
dude. These games, the 9. Here's what I can understand at 10 p.m. Eastern when you're playing on the West Coast because it's I would like that they play that at 6 or 5 on Pacific time, so it's 8 or 9 here. But there's been a couple this year that are 9 or 9:30, and both teams are playing on the East Coast, and I just I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I think they played Wisconsin at 9, which was 8 Central. They played Oklahoma at 9 and Charlotte. It's like, dude, I'm old, I'm tired, and I was gonna fix my sleep schedule last night, but I forgot that there was the night game because they flexed it.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, oh shit. And so then I was up till midnight because the heart's pumping after the big win over the Vikings. So I went to bed I checked my phone. It's like 12:41. I was trying to sleep for like an hour, and I was like, dude, I just wasn't sleeping.
Shout out to Dan Campbell. Shout out to Detroit, man. I mean, this is
Jameer.
This is so much fun, dude. I can't wait for whoever comes, whether it's either LA or Minnesota, right?
Yeah. I'd prefer to see the Rams. I think it's tough to beat a team 3 times, but I think Ben Johnson has just dominated that matchup with Brian Flores. So also it would be hilarious to beat the Vikings again. I will say I've seen Vikings fans. The thing Ohio State fans do? They're like, "Oh, join date 2022, go figure." And it's like,
yeah, you're right.
Do you think like when you join Twitter is like indicative of So now Vikings fans are doing that, and they're like calling us bandwagons. I'm like, dude, I got a fucking Mike Williams jersey and a Charles Rogers jersey in the closet from when I was like 8.
My first jersey ever was the Joey Harrington jersey.
I thought that's what you were gonna say. So it's like, dude, and if you look at the Lions' attendance, like it's been consistent even during the Matt Patricia era.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, of course Lions fans are going to be more vocal. I've been waiting for this my entire life. So
literally,
like these people who are like, and it's so funny, Justin, because I think I've said this on this pod, but I've told people just in different conversations, they're like, "Oh, I'm rooting for you." Well, I'm like, it's almost condescending. I don't need you to root for my team. I don't want you to do it out of pity. I want you to become just feel hatred.
Well, I think like last year it was like the feel good story because we had never been there before, right? And it was like, you like us. Dan Campbell's a likable guy. I still think I see a lot of national people that are like, man, the Lions are fun to root for. And I do like that.
The Patriots were in 2001 too, right? So it's like eventually you will be. The Chiefs were fun to root for. I don't like. I want that to stop because that means that the Lions are winning important games and are beating other people's favorite teams. But like, I'm so like, are we not allowed to be loud and vocal and celebrate? I got shit on for my entire life for being a Detroit Lions fan, and now that they're good, it's like, oh, you're a bandwagon. And I don't really care either, but it's like, what are you doing?
That's just like, I feel like that is the epitome of like every Twitter user out there.
That's
like,
fair.
slash X user, whatever you want to call it. But it's like that's the comeback. It's always like, oh, you joined Twitter in 2021. You're a Michigan fan. Oh, makes sense. Like you must not have been, whatever. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I don't. That's still the weirdest argument to me. Because then I'll go and look, and it's like, oh, they joined in 2015, right after they won the national championship.
Weird.
You don't see the irony in that? Like, yeah. But Twitter is literally the worst place now.
It's a wild place.
It's horrible.
I can't like open it in public anymore. Like
I'm with
weird things.
Yeah, my For You page, something's going on. I gotta call Elon and figure out what's going on with the For You page. But it's annoying because it's like I'll go to my following and then it'll flip back over to For You. But it's like it's just like ridiculous, like not safe for work stuff. And I'm like, what are we doing? Why is this on my page? This isn't. It's insane.
It's a lawless place at this point. It's wild.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that valuation is still 44 billion, but yeah. I'm not an economics guy, so
me either. All right. Well, that was a lot of info. We had to get.
That's what happens. Like we haven't also just personally talked to each other since like last week. So like this is just like a dump of like everything we have not caught up.
Exactly. This is exactly how it goes. And also, if you're wondering out there, if you're listening, first of all, if you've made it this far, thank you, and I'm sorry. But if you're wondering, these are how our just normal conversations go.
Yeah, this is us at the bar.
It is like the biggest example of ADHD. If a doctor was watching, they'd be like, this is like how I show to my med students what ADHD is.
Send the Adderall. Come on.
Yes, exactly. So, all right, we'll have some more content coming for you soon as the portal closes up and the CFP continues on, as well as Michigan basketball. So excited for all that. For us, you can follow us at Blue by 90 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Blue by 90 Podcast on YouTube, and BlueBy90.com. We appreciate you. Go Blue.
Go Blue.